Breece Hall, who filled David Montgomery's role when he left for the NFL,
Mm-hmm.
is generally the consensus number one running back in this class. A couple of stats just so people can kind of close their eyes and imagine: 5'11", 217 pounds. He's 20 years old. He'll be 21 at the end of May. He was a 4-star recruit, ranked inside the top 150 players at the position coming out of high school. 22 scholarships, lots of interest from big name schools, including Michigan and Oklahoma. But he decided to commit to Iowa State after a single visit. Like I said, he filled David Montgomery's shoes as a true freshman from 2019 through 2021. He strung together what many could call a storied college career. He became the first unanimous All-American in Cyclone history as a sophomore, and he set a new NCAA record for number of scores in consecutive games this past season with 24.
He was a monster there. I mean, Montgomery was obviously, a very, household name and has become a starting running back in the NFL. And of course, he was sort of made famous with that memeable ESPN graphic. I think that, compared him to every Hall of Fame running back on the planet, I want to say. But yeah, I mean, Breece Hall quietly has had a phenomenal college career, and the team's success has been okay, but really, his individual performances behind what I think is not a great offensive line has been terrific, especially this past season. But yeah, he stepped right in as a freshman, looked great. So this is a pro back right here. He's got the look, no doubt about it.
What was the first word that came to your mind when you were reviewing his tape?
Yeah, it's got to be burst. I mean, he really could explode and rip off the home runs. I mean, you give him a crease and he's gone, and it's that kind of quick acceleration, especially. It reminded me a little bit of early career Le'Veon Bell in that regard, where, he'd sort of tiptoe to the line and then all of a sudden, boom, turn on the afterjets. And, as he got bigger, his speed diminished. But, early on, you could see once he had lost weight a little bit, the exceptional burst. But talking about Breece Hall, his body composition is terrific. He had a great workout at the NFL Combine, maybe even a little bit better than I thought he would. But yeah, he's really he's got the total package in terms of running the football. You can question his third down value, but that burst is really, I think, his superpower, if you will.
Well, you mentioned the combine. I think his showing at the combine helped solidify his position as the likely RB1 off the board. He recorded speed and burst scores well inside the 90th percentile. So in terms of full package, that's certainly physically what he brings to the table. I also think I think he's wildly patient, and that's a really maybe underlooked part of his game. My first word was focus, because you can just see him lock in, like the way he reads the field. You can watch his eyes. He locks in on a hole, and he uses that speed and burst to just get right through it. So I think there's a lot of layers to his game. He's not just a physical freak, but also has some maturity to, his technique and the feel for the game as well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's easy to look at the long runs and just say, oh, he's a speed guy, or, he's just got that straight ahead speed. But, you watch the way he would kind of manipulate would-be tacklers. I mean, he would kind of draw them in and then juke out to the outside, or, take angles that they couldn't reach him at. I mean, he was very creative in open space too. And he could fit through some tight holes as well. I mean, again, running the football with his desire, his leg churn, and also those physical traits that we talked about. Boy, I mean, he looks like your classic bell cow back from that respect. I mean, you want to question his third down value? I'm fine with that. He's got some work to do, but first and second downs, this is your man right here.
And I am assuming you're talking about the questions around his third down value because of his use as a pass catcher.
Yeah.
It wasn't really until his final year that he got a real crack at it. But I do think, if we're talking about layers of talent, the progression that he made over his college career is evident in what he put together from a pass catching point of view in that final year.
Yeah, I mean, he was kind of relegated to, screens and dump offs and little flares and things like that. It was fascinating because I'd watched, I think, 4 games of him, and I realized I didn't see a target more than about 5 yards downfield. So I went deeper, and, I think he was, thrown to 4 times beyond 10 yards in 3 seasons. So, It's not to say that he can't do it. I mean, I think he's shown pretty reliable hands. The pass protection skills have got to get better. Again, something I think with the right technique and time he can be good at. He's not even 21 years old yet, as you pointed out. So, these parts of his game I think can mature. Not everybody walks into the league a third down machine. Some guys can, some can't. Some can get better at it. I think he's probably one of those guys, but to me, he's more of your classic line up in the backfield. When you're not going tempo, you sub him out on third downs until he gets acclimated to it. It's not that they can't throw him the football on first and second down. It's just that when it comes to the pass protection skills a little bit, I don't know that I would trust him in week one picking up Von Miller or whatever. I don't think that's going to work pretty well for you.
Any concern about the odometer rating, right? 800 touches in college. One side of the coin is, wow, he was so productive. The other side of the coin is, oh my gosh, there's some tread on the tires here.
Yeah, over a 3-year period, that's a high number. Now, I mean, you could argue that there have been backs that have come into the league with over 1,000 carries and have just been fine in the early parts of their career, but it's something to watch, right? And, I mean, if there's another negative, it's that he had some, a couple of costly fumbles last season, lost to Iowa, I want to say in the third quarter, cost his team points on both of them. The one against West Virginia too was costly. The workload and the injury factor that comes along with it. We mentioned the third down stuff. I mean, those are all, I think, fair questions, but it's not anything that I'm going to terribly shred him down for, because you pointed out, I mean, they did expand his role a little bit last season. He did appear comfortable with it. So you can kind of take baby steps with this, and depending on where he lands, I think he should be fine in that respect.
Who are you comping him to?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because a couple different guys came up, and then all of a sudden I went, wait a minute, let me just take a look at this. And I started looking at Jonathan Taylor. And I went,
fantasy heads are going to love that one.
I mean,
Eric.
honestly, he's not as big. He's about, 10, 12 pounds lighter. He's a couple inches shorter. So physically speaking, he's a little bit more compact of a version, but basically the same usage in college. Remember, we questioned whether Taylor could be a third down option, and, he would catch those little short passes and stuff. I mean, the usage was almost exactly the same. High, carry volume, true workhorse back. Not a ton of third down value beyond whatever he could do athletically. I mean, I'm just saying, I didn't even want to say poor man's Jonathan Taylor. I wanted to come strong and just say he's got a lot of elements of Taylor's game in what he does.
Well, and it's interesting because you said you didn't believe, and I agree with you, that the Cyclones had a particularly good or effective offensive line. And so and we know that was one of the question marks for Taylor coming
Good
out,
point.
right? Is Wisconsin's line is solid, and is there something being hidden there? And of course, he landed in Indianapolis, which is like another gift in terms of O-line, right? But I think those questions have been answered, and so the fact that Hall is coming to the table with productivity despite the line and earning a comp to Taylor from you says a lot about his overall ability and skill set. We're mentioning the odometer rating and the carry load. I think maybe that's why I was leaning more towards DeMarco Murray. We all know how that career ended.
Yep.
I think we should all remember how it started, though. Pretty prolifically. I also look at the measurables, and I just think that like Murray's, the speed, the burst, all of that, the pass catching eventual use as a pass catcher, kind of all folded into me that there are shades of that sort of skill set in Hall's ability.
Yeah, DeMarco Murray ran a sub 4.4 in college, I believe. Check me if I'm wrong. I might be, maybe he was a little over, but I mean, he was fast and big, and this tough guy. And I was at one of his games when he had 40 carries. Like, I don't think that's how Breece Hall is necessarily going to be used, but he could. I mean, he had games where he was in the high 20s, and even I think a couple 30 carry games too. So I see it absolutely. I think, DeMarco Murray was a workout guy early in his career before those carry totals kind of wore him down most likely.